Okay, well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm extremely happy that finally the government is doing something to sort out this problem of fake news. Because I've been very confused recently. I've been seeing all sorts of stories on the internet, and I'm never quite sure. It's been shared on social media. Is it true? Is it fake news? Well, fortunately for us, Theresa May and her cabinet ministers have ridden to our rescue. They've done two things which needed doing to sort out the difference between fake news and real news. The first thing is that they've formed a fake news unit which is going to clamp down, finally, on fake news being shared on social media. And when she talks about sharing fake news on social media, she's talking about you, naughty people, who are watching things like this on things like Twitter and Facebook, because that's probably where you're watching this, or YouTube, and sharing it and liking it, because every time you share and like things like this, you're actually, according to Theresa, participating in fake news. Every word I'm saying now is, according to her, fake news. But she's done something else even better. She has decided to drop the second part of the Leveson inquiry because, we need reputable sources of news so that we can check where it's from, and if it's from a reputable source, we know it's true. So reputable sources, of course, according to Theresa May, are the Sun, the Mail, and the Express, etc. We now know that they can print what they like because freedom of speech. But most importantly of all, we know that if it's printed in those places, we can check it's from that source, that it must be true. And this is great news. I'm very, very happy about this because there have been quite a few stories that I've been seeing recently, and I've not been, all that sure whether they're true or not. And I'll give you an example. I read recently that the EU, this is being shared on social media, was putting speed limits, forcing British playgrounds to put speed limits on children's roundabouts. Now, I was absolutely sure this was fake news, because it's ridiculous. But no, it's okay, I checked. It was written in the Express. So thank you, Theresa. I now know that that must be true. Another example of something that I thought was fake news, that euro banknotes cause impotence. I was sure this was just ridiculous fake news. No, it's okay, I checked. It was written in the Mail. Thank you, Theresa. We now know that that must be true, and it's okay to share it. Of course, the EU apparently, I saw this what I thought was ridiculous. I'm clearly not very good at separating fake news from real news. The EU was apparently is banning zips on trousers. I'm not making any of these up, by the way. These are all real headlines and real stories. This one was in The Sun, and I was convinced it was fake news, but it's okay. Theresa assures me that actually this is true because it was from a reputable news source, in this case, The Sun. Okay, you're smiling and thinking you're talking about The Sun and the Mail and the Express, Tom. They can be a bit dodgy. No, okay, no. What about the Telegraph, yes? Because the Telegraph, there was a story not long ago that the EU is banning double-decker buses. And I love double-decker buses. I was extremely worried about this. I wasn't sure if it's fake news or not. I suspected it was fake news, but it's, I'm even more worried now about it because now it was printed in the Telegraph. So, let's save those double-decker buses. I can go on and on and on, of course, like this. A couple of years ago, I noticed all of these mainstream press, reputable news sources, according to Theresa May, were outraged because apparently the word Easter has been dropped by Cadbury's and by National Trust for their Easter egg hunts because of political correctness and or whatever. And I was so sure this was fake news. I actually looked on the Cadbury's website, and I actually noticed that they do use the word Easter everywhere on their website. And I checked on their Easter eggs in the shops, and they did have the word Easter. And I checked on the website of National Trust. They do use the word Easter hunt, egg hunt. But, okay, I obviously can no longer believe my own eyes because this was printed this has been printed in all the mainstream press that Easter has been banned by the National Trust and by Cadbury's. So it obviously must be true. of course, I'm being sarcastic here. We all know that the mainstream press distorts and twists the truth. But we're being a bit too nice about this here, because perhaps that was true at one time, that they just reported some things, ignored others, and kind of spun and twisted the truth a bit. No, we're now talking about something else. We're talking about the mainstream press are out and out lying. Because let's take another story. Jeremy Corbyn, again, who's been the victim of a lot of smears. And some of them are debatable. Yeah, he met this person. Did he meet him like this? Was this person this, and so on? But some of them are just clearly outright lies. And I'll give you an example of some outright lies. Because he, for example, he attended the, as he always does, actually, the Remembrance Sunday parade in the Cenotaph. In 2016, he attended there with a friend of his, a World War II veteran. And he was chatting to this guy, and he was photographed and filmed by supposedly professional photographers as he was doing this. And it was reported in the Mail and the Sun that he was dancing. What they did was they took these photographs of him talking to this World War II veteran. They photoshopped out the World War II veteran, which is already pretty outrageous as far as I'm concerned, on Remembrance Sunday, and then took him as he was talking and reported that he was dancing. So the Mail said, "Is this really the day to audition for Strictly, Jeremy? Corbyn appears to dance a jig at the Cenotaph as he waits for the Remembrance Day parade." What's the technical word that they use in the press for this kind of story? Oh yeah, that's right, I remember. A lie. It's just a lie. They photoshopped it and lied. Tim Sculthorpe, he's the Mail Online deputy political editor, just wrote a lie. And the Sun said something very similar. Have you no respect? Jeremy Corbyn dances his way into Downing Street as he attends Remembrance Sunday at the Cenotaph. Again, they lied. In this case, it was Alan Tolhurst, supposedly professional journalist at the Sun, just wrote this lie. So, photoshopping things, lying, this is not manipulation, this is not spinning, these are just out and out lies for political reasons. And is this important? Yeah, it's really important. And I'll tell you why it's really important. Because, when you have professional journalists writing lies, such as Euronotes cause impotence, or the EU's putting speed limits on children's roundabouts, or curb bananas are banned by Brussels, then the result is a breakdown of democracy, which is what we saw in the case of Brexit. But when you have the mainstream press lying about minorities, and I'm coming to that next, in order to vilify them, as we've seen with Muslims and we've seen with immigrants in general, then we get something much worse than a temporary breakdown of democracy. Much worse. And let's look at that a little bit, because again, it's very easy to say it's the Sun and the Mail and the Express. But I want to take one story which was reported in the Times. Of course, it was picked up by all the other press, but it was reported in the Times originally, which was, you probably remember this, it was the story about a little girl placed with Muslim foster parents and how they banned her, supposedly, from celebrating Easter. They took the crucifix off her. They couldn't speak English. The foster mother wore a veil, and all of this kind of thing. This was outrage everywhere. The point is about this story is, it was in the Times. It was a lie. It was fake news. And I, on my blog, because this was not debunked, this fake news, by professional journalists, I did it with a little bit of investigation. It was extremely easy to debunk this. It was debunked on social media, the very social media that Theresa May is trying to clamp down on. And this was in the Times. It was not in the Mail. It was also reported by all the others, but the original story was in the Times. And it was outrageous because, first of all, this girl, who was supposedly Christian, she wasn't. Her grandparents are Muslim. Her mother was brought up Muslim, but decided to reject her religion, which is why the mother said that the girl wasn't Muslim. But the girl was, her own grandparents are Muslim. That's a fact. It's in the court documents. Check them. And if you want to check this, by the way, I did a long blog post about this in detail. This Tom Pride blog, just Google it, put little girl Muslim foster parents, and you'll get it immediately in Google. And you'll see that I debunk all these things. That they couldn't speak English was reported. The foster parents couldn't speak. Yes, they could. Do you know how hard it is to become foster parents in the UK? You could never jump through those hoops without being able to speak English. They simply could speak English. This was a lie. And it was untrue that they banned Easter, all of those kind of things. But, there was a photograph accompanying this in the Mail, this story, and they took a stock photograph of a Muslim couple in Dubai, walking in a park in Dubai with their little girl. They photoshopped out the guy. You can see the Dubai buildings in the background. And this woman in Dubai wasn't wearing a veil, so they photoshopped one on her and used this as the picture, as if it was the foster mother with the little girl. This is outrageous. This is not just manipulation. This is lies, out and out lies by so-called professional journalists in the mainstream press. And is this important? Yes, it's really, really, really important. Because this, as I said before, leads to a breakdown of democracy and worse. So my question to UK journalists is this, because Theresa May is going to do what she needs to do to keep, her mates in the press reporting and lying on her behalf and clamp down on social media, people like me and people like you watching this. For her own ends. But these are written by so-called professional journalists. And my question to them is this: when are you going to have the balls enough to stand up to your proprietors, stand up for your once proud profession, and tell them enough is enough? Lying, spinning in propaganda is not your job. Reporting the truth is. And it's about time you started doing that.